It was in the fall of 1955 that the lyrics, "a wop bop a loo bop, a wop bam boom," hit the airwaves. Since then, popular music's never been the same. The lyrics were from a song called Tutti Frutti, and it was sung by a young man named Richard Penniman, popularly known as Little Richard. This morning, Little Richard kicks off a 4-part series on some of the godfathers of rock and roll, pioneers who forever changed the sound of popular music. Quote from Little Richard, "I really feel from the bottom of my heart that I am the inventor, the architect of rock and roll."
I feel that. I still feel that. And I think anybody that is truthful would say that. I was before all of it. When I came out, Brian, there was no rock and roll singers. It was big bands, boogie woogie, and rhythm and blues.
Give me a working definition of rock and roll.
Rock and roll is a fun music. You know what rock and roll is really boogie woogie. That's what rock and roll is. It's rhythm and blues up-tempo. You know this song here? You got me running, you got me hiding, you got me run high. Any way you want it, let it roll.
And instead of that, you gave them...
And instead of that, I did this.
And that put the devil in the children.
Ready, set, go, man, go. I got a gal that I love, so I'm ready. Ready, set, I'm ready.
You know, I just wanted to play the piano and sing. But then the music got wilder and wilder.
Rock and roll.
The older people didn't like it. The old black people didn't like it. They said that it was bad for the children because, you know, everybody was screaming and jumping and dancing. They saw this typhoon coming through, this tornado, and they had to stop it.
Rock and roll.
Let's start at the beginning.
Yes.
Macon, Georgia. You were, what, third oldest of 14?
12.
Of 12.
12. Mm-hmm.
Were all the kids musically inclined?
No, nobody but me. I was the one that, they all thought I was crazy, Brian. We didn't have no piano, but I would play the doorsteps. I would beat on the doorsteps every day and sing for people. People would come by and they would listen to me sing. Like I was saying, see, rider, see what you have done, Lord, Lord, Lord.
How old were you at the time?
When I first started, my uncle was carrying me around in the car. I was 5 or 6. We had a group called the Tiny Tots Quartet, and he would take us around to all the rest homes and different churches. And then, after I got a little older, I went with Dr. Hudson Medicine Show. He was selling snake oil, and he said it was good for everything. And, you know, I thought that, too. I believed that. And we would put up a big stage out in the middle of a field. And we would play the piano and sing, and people would come, just pack out in the field. No money. We didn't charge anything, but we charged $1 a bottle for this oil.
Yeah. How'd you get the first contract with RCA Victor?
I was working in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Royal Peacock with Zella Mays, and it was a guy by the name of Daddy Sears, Zena Sears. He was a disc jockey. And he recorded me in his radio station in the lobby of the radio station.
In the lobby?
In the lobby of the radio station. There wasn't no studio. And so I recorded a song called Gonna Get Rich Quick and Taxi Blues. It was popular in Macon and in Atlanta. And my name started going out from
But it didn't really catch on then, did it?
No, it didn't.
Why
but
not?
You know, I was with RCA Victor before Elvis Presley. But if you was black, it was called Camden.
But the whole Camden label never really worked out, did it?
No, it didn't. You thought you was going somewhere. You found out the car wasn't moving. You didn't go no place. You hear all the other artists on RCA Victor, but your records never hit because they didn't push them.
Were you at that time playing the music that you later became famous for, or was it still something, a hybrid of gospel and...
No, I did a song called Every Day I Have the Blues, and I did stuff like that. It was very good for that time, blues.
But shortly after that, you wound up basically unemployed, right? You were, what, washing dishes
I
at
was
Greyhound?
washing dishes at the Greyhound bus station in Macon, Georgia. And couldn't even eat in the restaurant while I was fixing the stuff. You know, you couldn't, you had to eat.
They wouldn't let you eat?
No, you couldn't eat there. You couldn't go to the bathroom either. You had to go, you went in the old raggedy bathroom in the back and you drank out of the old sink that was raggedy.
Let's move on to better times. You got out of the bus depot, and a lot of historians say that rock and roll began on September 14, 1955. with Specialty Records. You came along on Specialty Records and did Tutti Frutti.
Tutti Frutti, and that was the first. That's right.
I got a girl named Blue. She knows just what to do.
Do you think the sexual excitement sold the song?
It helped.
Where'd the lyrics come from?
I don't know, Bryant, but I'm so glad they came. I'll tell you what it came from. It was kind of risky at the time. I was singing Tutti Frutti, good booty. If it don't fit, don't force it. You can grease it and make it easy. Prince would have loved it back at that period. But you know, they wouldn't play it like that. They said it was smutty. And so I went back and they got the girl to help me clean up my own lyrics. It was my song. I brought the song there.
Was it also at that time that most white people were calling it nigger music?
Oh, it was called that. Even when Elvis came on the scene, it was called nigger music. But I believe my music was a forerunner for integration because when my music was played, the white kids would jump over the balcony and mix. And I believe that my music was the music of love. It brought two races together.
But to sell it, a lot of times, they gave it away. They gave it to Pat Boone to clean it up and make it look pretty.
It was so clean, it didn't have no furniture in the house. It was, you know, he's a wop bop-a-loom bop-a-lop bam boom, but the white kids still want to wop bop-a-loom bop-a-lop, woo, to the foot. That's what they wanted, and they got it. I think they gave it to Pat Boone for more than just to clean it up. They didn't like me because I was young, my skin was pretty, I had long wavy hair, and I looked good. And the white girls liked that suntan I was carrying through the South. And they didn't want that image over those white kids. The mothers, the white families would let them bring his record in the house and wouldn't let mine in.
Did you really, is this true, that when you decided, said, I'm out of the business in '57, did you really throw all your jewelry in the harbor in Sydney?
I threw everything away.
Why?
I don't know. Oh, one of the band boys by the name of, his name was Clifford and Grady Gaines from Houston, Texas, said, if you're serious about going to the Lord, throw your rings in the water. I says, I will. And they were shocked when I did. They said, oh, they wanted to jump in there because they was big, beautiful rings. Cost a lot of money.
You actually left to try to get more in touch with the Lord.
That's right. And so I don't think that's never a mistake when you want to get closer to God, to be one of his shepherds. I was just thinking about protection and direction and being secure in God. Money was not a factor.
I saw the job.
When you came back in '64, the musical landscape had changed.
Way so.
That was, what, the beginning of the British invasion?
Yes, but you know, when the Beatles came along, personally, I was very glad for them, you know, because I loved Paul and the boys, and I knew they was inspired by me.
Little Richard, are you listening, Richard? Yes, it was you. You are the king.
What do you think nowadays of most of the music that's out there?
I like it.
Do you see a lot of Little Richard copycats out
yes,
there?
I tell you, I see myself in a lot of people. Some people, I see my image and not my music. Michael Jackson, I see my image. When I saw Michael first, I saw my cheekbones, my image, my look. Prince, that image, that came from Little Richard. Because all guys was afraid to look like that back in that time. I was the only guy that had nerve to wear the makeup and to have the hair. Nobody want nobody to call them no names, and I didn't care what to say.
Final question. If Little Richard had been white,
it wouldn't have been nobody else.
you'd have been that big.
I would have been that big. If I was white, you wouldn't have heard nobody.
There'd have never been an Elvis?
Nobody.
Tomorrow morning, as we continue our series on the Godfathers of rock and roll, we'll talk with Chuck Berry. 7:51 on this Monday morning. Take a break right here. This is Today on NBC.
Oh, baby, will it end, you and me?
Whatever the truth about the roots of rock and roll, there's no denying that the trail went through Wentzville, Missouri, because that's where a man named Charles Edward Berry was born 66 years ago. In part 2 of our series on the Godfathers of rock and roll, we look at the career of Chuck Berry, a man who gave us some rock and roll classics. Even though he didn't even take an active interest in music until his teens, Berry's was an interest that would eventually help him forever alter the course of popular music.
Baby, you can't catch me.
chose to do things with your guitar and with your lyrics that no one was trying to do at the time. What do you think spawned it?
Someone was. Louis Jordan. Louis Jordan did, and I was just a freshman in high. He was singing This Chick's Too Young to Fry, Beware, Ration Blues. This is 1941. It seems as though it was yesterday. And I took my lyric inspirations from him. He had some dynamite lyrics.
Walking with my baby, she got great big feet. She's long, lean, and lank, and ain't had nothing to eat. But she's my baby, and I love her just the same.
And of course, I took my diction from Nat Cole, who sang just as clear as a Christian. I wanted to sing like Nat with like Louis Jordan, and then I could go places.
Caledonia! Caledonia! What make your big head so hard?
When did you first start to go places? When did you first think, okay, maybe this can pay some bills?
I guess in '54, I was doing very good. We're up to $60 a night now, and I can do it because I'm working in the day too at the automobile plant. Then I went to Chicago and made this record, Maybelline and Rollo Beethoven, and then Leonard Chess with his finesse put it in the right places, paid the right payola.
7:51 on this Monday morning. Take a break right here. This is Today on NBC. Whatever the truth about the roots of rock and roll, there's no denying that the trail went through Wentzville, Missouri, because that's where a man named Charles Edward Berry was born 66 years ago. In part 2 of our series on the Godfathers of rock and roll, we look at the career of Chuck Berry, a man who gave us some rock and roll classics. Even though he didn't even take an active interest in music until his teens, Berry's was an interest that would eventually help him forever alter the course of popular music.
Baby, you can't catch me. 'Cause if you get too close, you know I'm gone like a cool breeze.
You chose to do things with your guitar and with your lyrics that no one was trying to do at the time. What do you think spawned it?
Someone was. Louis Jordan. Louis Jordan did, and I was just a freshman in high. He was singing This Chick's Too Young to Fry, Beware, Ration Blues. This is 1941. It seems as though it was yesterday. And I took my lyric inspirations from him. He had some dynamite lyrics.
Walking with my baby, she got great big feet. She's long, lean, and lank, and ain't had nothing to eat. But she's my baby, and I love her just the same.
And of course, I took my diction from Nat Cole, who sang just as clear as a Christian. I wanted to sing like Nat with like Louis Jordan, and then I could go places.
Caledonia! Caledonia! What makes my baby, and I love her just the same.
And of course, I took my diction from Nat Cole, who sang just as clear as a Christian. I wanted to sing like Nat with like Louis Jordan, and then I could go places.
Caledonia! Caledonia! What make your big head so hard?
When did you first start to go places? When did you first think, okay, maybe this can pay some bills?
I guess in '54, I was doing very good. We're up to $60 a night now, and I can do it because I'm working in the day too at the automobile plant. Then I went to Chicago and made this record, Maybelline and Rollo Beethoven, and then Leonard Chess with his finesse put it in the right places, paid the right payola, as I understand, and it took off. Maybelline did.
Well, there's a story there. When that song came along, some folks started calling it rock and roll at that point. Alan Freed is credited with... Here, this is Today on NBC.
Oh, baby, you and me.
Whatever the truth about the roots of rock and roll, there's no denying that the trail went through Wentzville, Missouri, because that's where a man named Charles Edward Berry was born 66 years ago. In part 2 of our series on the Godfathers of rock and roll, we look at the career of Chuck Berry, a man who gave us some rock and roll classics. Even though he didn't even take an active interest in music until his teens, Berry's was an interest that would eventually help him forever alter the course of popular music.
Baby, you can't catch me. 'Cause if you get too close, you know I'm gone like a cool breeze.
You chose to do things with your guitar and with your lyrics that no one was trying to do at the time. What do you think spawned it?
Someone was. Louis Jordan. Louis Jordan did, and I was just a freshman in high. He was singing This Chick's Too Young to Fry, Beware, Ration Blues. This is 1941. It seems as though it was yesterday. And I took my lyric inspirations from him. He had some dynamite lyrics.
Walking with my baby, she got great big feet. She's long, lean, and lank, and ain't had nothing to eat. But she's my baby, and I love her just the same.
And of course, I took my diction from Nat Cole, who sang this as clear as a Christian. I wanted to sing like Nat, with like Louis Jordan, and then I could go places.
Caledonia! Caledonia! What make your big head so hard?
When did you first start to go places? When did you first think, okay, maybe this can pay some bills?
I guess in '54, I was doing very good. We're up to $60 a night now, and I can do it because I'm working in the day too at the automobile plant. Then I went to Chicago and made this record, Maybelline and Rollo Beethoven, and then Leonard Chess, with his finesse, put it in the right places, paid the right payola, as I understand, and it took off. Maybelline did.
Well, there's a story there. When that song came along, some folks started calling it rock and roll at that point. Alan Freed is credited with naming it rock and roll. Do you know how it changed from boogie woogie to rock and roll?
As I was told, Freed started off in Cleveland, and he started off what they call discoing, you know, playing records in a black club, predominantly black club. And he said he looked out and saw the people dancing with each other, and they were just rocking. Not teenagers, just you know, young adults. And they would rock, and they would roll, sometimes called a belly roll. So they rocking and rolling. Mm-hmm. That's what he told over the radio. And his show was going all over Nashville and everywhere. St. Louis, his radio station was very powerful, and that's how he got powerful and came to New York.
Now, Alan Freed wound up getting listed as a co-writer on Maybelline.
Yeah.
Did he ever write any bit of it?
No, that was given to him for playing Maybelline repeatedly, I guess.
So Leonard Chess paid him a lot of money, told him we'd make you co-writer on the thing if you'll play it.
What? He gave him the writing. I don't know, he might have paid him money. I don't know about that, but I do know that he gave him a piece of the writing pie, you know. Let's back up a little bit. I didn't know you could pay for writing music, or I would have jumped in foot first, you know. I knew you got paid for playing music. Writers' royalties, all these things came into me almost 3 years after I was, hey, this money, where is it? You know, I wasn't getting it.
There she is again, standing over by the record machine, looking like a model on the cover of a magazine.
Simple question. Did Chuck Berry invent rock and roll?
No.
If you didn't, who did?
First place, rock and roll wasn't invented. People were playing it ever since Fats Waller.
Go, 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 little Queenie.
You know, Little Richard says he invented it, that he's the architect of it.
I have no qualms. It doesn't bother me that someone else takes a credit for something that they did. That's not my business, you know.
Then how come Chuck Berry's always credited with being the guy who started it, the guy who made it acceptable, the guy who made it big?
Right? I think it's the lyrics. I came right in at the right time when Afro-American music was spilling over into the mainstream of pop. And I had lyrics that floated along with their daily rituals. And if you look back at those songs, they're all little stories that could very well happen to the average American boy or girl.
All the cats wanna dance with sweet little sexy.
How'd the duck walk come about, Chuck? Don't tell me that story about walking underneath the table as a kid. That's a true story?
That is the truest. I was playing with a ball and scooted under the table, and I scooted under the table after it, just as you see the duck walk, only I went to get the ball. And Mother had me do that for company. She'd have that ball, and she said, honey, go get this for me, you know, and I'd go under there and get it, and they enjoyed it, you know. But it faded out until I went to the Paramount Theater. I think I was 30 years old. It did never cross my mind, but on stage, when you're in a solo and you're playing your guitar and you want to make it very, very attractive, I went down, did it, and the audience just went out through the roof. And of course, I turned around at the end of the stage and came back, because you know you're going to milk a good applause till you get to the end. And I'm so glad I did. I don't know what to do, because it became a ritual to my act.
Came the 60s, things changed. British invasion. Kind of pushed some of the early rock and rollers off to the side. And yet they continually gave credit for their success and their influences to people like you. Did that make it any easier to accept?
Yes, that was enlightening. And I thank them for it, because I was taught to always accept a present, never turn down a gift.
If you listen to kind of Chuck Berry stuff, I mean, I think he's a genius in his work.
The British invasion was different. It was so different. The long hair, the accent. Like I say, it was time for a change.
What if I say, okay, Chuck, we're burying a time capsule. We're allowed to put one of your songs in it. Which one would it be?
Time capsule, okay. A Man There Was. You haven't heard it because I just recorded it. Man that was of unusual gifts, and he bore such a good honored name. Life came to him with outstretched hands, offering him wealth and fame. But he turned his head at the humble prize, counting it little appeal, thinking himself as a minor thought. He was only a cog in the wheel.
Tomorrow morning, as we continue our series in the Godfathers of Rock and Roll, we'll talk with the self-proclaimed killer, Jerry Lee Lewis. 7:53, we're back in a moment, right after these messages. So far this week, we have heard Chuck Berry downplay his role in the birth of rock and roll, and heard Little Richard claim that he invented it. This morning, as we continue our series on the Godfathers of Rock and Roll, we hear from a man who bluntly boasts that he is rock and roll. His name is Jerry Lee Lewis, and he's never lacked confidence. He called himself the Killer, and though he made only 3 top 10 hits, he first gave rock the aggressive edge and outlaw image that it still carries today. Who taught you to play the piano?
Myself.
You taught yourself?
Right. Day in and day out.
Did it come easy?
No, sir. I learned to play pretty fast, pretty quick, but I didn't get any directions from anybody else to play piano, because I never heard anybody else play piano.
You didn't hear anybody else?
No. No. I know that may sound phony, but it's true. I got my own style from myself. Worked on it year in and year out, 6, 7 hours a day.
Why? What did it do for you, Jerry?
Well, I don't know how to answer that, Brian, except that I love music. I love rock, blues, just good ear-listening music.
What possessed you to then proceed on up to Sam Phillips and try to play for him?
I seen a picture in a book with a man called Sam C. Phillips released some records on a guy called Elvis Presley out of Memphis on Sun Records. And me and my daddy was out in the field. We were pulling corn. You know. And I said, Daddy, I think I'm going to Memphis. I was 20 years old then. I said, well, I read about this boy called Elvis Presley who is really something else. And Sam Phillips got him started. I think he could get me started. We sold 39 dozen of eggs to get the money to drive up here, you know?
Oh, I gotta get with it, baby. I rock away all out blue.
I knew I could be a hit.
Oh, and never high too high. Everybody stopping, everybody stopping. Well, I'm getting tired now, I gotta get tired.
What did you think rock and roll was?
Well, at that time, it really wasn't any rock and roll. It was rockabilly.
How was rockabilly different than boogie woogie?
Rockabilly is the next thing to hillbilly. A lot of difference. Rockabilly is a stand-up, big stand-up bass with Bill Black playing on it, you know, and Scotty Moore on a guitar, trying to pick Chet Atkins style, which can't, and Elvis Presley saying, baby, baby, baby. Rockabilly.
That was rockabilly.
Yeah.
So what was rock and roll?
Jerry Lee Lewis.
Were you the inventor?
Yes, sir.
Plain and simple.
You can check your encyclopedia of the books. And they never could come up with the word, what was rock and roll? Well, when they saw my show at the Paramount Theater with Alan Freed, and they put a picture of me in the encyclopedia. And it says, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the conclusion what rock and roll is. And they had a picture of me leaping off of a piano with my hair about this high, flying through the air, doing a whole lot of shaking going on. They said, this is rock and roll.
Come on over, baby. Whole lot of shaking going on. Come on over, baby. Baby, you can't go wrong.
People write that you went after it, that you were a white man with a black man's soul.
You're right. That's what they say. I thought it was a great compliment because I love the black man's music.
Was everything you did at the piano natural, or was any of it contemplated for effect?
Not at first, no. But I got to thinking, I said, there's got to be something else you got to do, Jerry Lee, you know, to stir up these people. I said, I think I'll just kick the piano stool back one time and act like I'm knocking it over, but not really, you know, and see what they think of that. And they went crazy over it. So I began to pay for a lot of piano stools.
It came to a full stop, Jerry, in '58. Did it embitter you?
No, not really. No, not at all.
Would you change anything?
No. If I changed anything, I wouldn't have that beautiful daughter sitting out there. My biggest downfall, I would say, would be sticking with Sam Phillips on Sun Records when all this publicity broke on me. He never backed me up. He kept me there for 6 years on his label. And I'm talking about Sun Records, a label that Elvis Presley had 8 releases on and never even had a hit record until he got on RCA Victor. Sam Phillips, you know, he would not give me a chance. He wouldn't turn me loose. And I had to stick it out until I got on Mercury Records. And I had to come in the back door using country-type music.
That bother you?
Well, not a bit. I thought it was great.
What do you think of what passes today for modern rock?
Well, looking back, going to the Beatles, for instance, and on through, it seems like they were great in what they were doing. I never did like it, but the simplicity, they took the simplicity completely away from rock and roll.
What about the modern stuff today?
Nah.
Don't like it?
I don't hear anything out there that's a threat.
Simple question. Were you better than Elvis?
Musically speaking, or talent speaking, yeah. I think so. Yeah. He admitted it to Sam Phillips. Yeah.
Let me in on that if you would.
Well, he went up to the Sun record one day a few years back before he died. He said, you know, Mr. Phillips, Jerry Lee, really when it comes to talent, he's got more talent in his little finger than I have in my whole body.
So why do you figure Elvis became Elvis?
Because he had a great manager, Tom Parker, who treated him as if he was a monkey in a cage.
If you'd have had the Colonel, could you have been king?
I don't think the Colonel could have lived through it.
Tomorrow we'll conclude our series with Bo Diddley. We're back in a moment, right after this.
5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, a rock.
This morning, in the fourth and final part of our series on the Godfathers of rock and roll, we turn our attention to a man who was born Elias McDaniel in Macomb, Mississippi, but spent most of his childhood in Chicago, where as a teen, he became known as Bo Diddley. He is recognized as one of the giants of rock and roll. With his guitar, he first started turning pop music upside down nearly 40 years ago. Until you, it was thought that lyrics, melody, and chords were the primary foundation of any song. You came along and shook it up and said, no, let's count rhythm.
I am what I call a doctor of rhythm. I have no background in primitive music, but somehow or another, my mind runs in that vein of coming up with different rhythms. I can do African rhythms, Russian rhythms and stuff. I think this comes from my training with the violin.
True?
Yes. I'm a classical violinist.
No, you're not.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I played classical music for about 12 years. I won awards as a child. I played Carnegie Hall.
How'd you come by the guitar then?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't see too many black dudes playing violin and making a whole lot of money. You know, and what my thing was, I wanted to make money, but not necessarily with the guitar, because to me, this was an accident. You know, I had no idea I was going to become who I am today. I was about 11, 12, 13, somewhere along in there, and I heard John Lee Hooker playing. And I said, if this cat can play, I can learn. And around Christmas time, my sister, Lucille, I told her that I wanted one of those. And she bought it for me. It was $19. And I took it home and learned how to play on one string when the saints go marching in, because I was a little church boy.
Just on one string?
Yeah, just on. You know, the other strings, you know, it didn't make a difference, you know. And then I accidentally tuned it one day the way that I'm tuning it. Now, I say I'm playing backwards. You know, I don't play like the average guitar player. You know, the cats have to do their fingers all like this and all that kind of stuff. I do it in chords, you know, and get basically almost the same thing.
Who were the early influences when you started fiddling with the guitar, when you first became somewhat adept at it?
There were no influences because I don't sound like anybody else. You know, I created my own thing.
All right, let's cut to the heart of this. In your view, how large a role did you play in the birth of what came to be known as rock and roll?
You want to know the real truth about that? Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley were the first two people out here to be called rock and roll. And that name came from Alan Freed right here in New York City. And he said, here, when he introduced me on the stage, he said, here's a man with an original sound. It's going to rock and roll you right out of your seat. And that was the beginning of the word rock and roll.
Oh, did the body baby diamond ring? If that diamond ring don't shine.
One of your first hit songs was simply called Bo Diddley. It was a huge hit for you.
Yeah.
What drove that song? It wasn't very complicated. Why was it suddenly such a huge hit?
I think the song was a rhythm pattern that everybody understands. If you notice how the rhythms are going today, I was just about 10 years ahead of my time, maybe 20 years ahead of my time. You know, it's just come back around with a new generation of kids, and they think it's something new. We've already done that. Chuck Berry, you know, Little Richard, and we've already pulled these rhythms already. And it's new to them.
Your discology includes, I'm only going to read part of it.
Yeah.
Bo Diddley, Diddley Daddy, Hey Bo Diddley, The Story of Bo Diddley, Bo's Guitar, Bo's Vacation, Bo's Blues, Bo Diddley's a Lover, Bo's Bounce, Bo's Twist. Why so much self-promotion, Bo?
I love me. I love me, man. You know, it sounds good to me. Like Bo knows, Bo knows a lot of things, you understand? And I am very selfish about that name.
The years, if you drew them on the graph, have been some up, some down. When the music changed in the 60s was one of the periods where it turned and went down. Why? What happened?
What happened?
Yeah.
Well, I spent about 8 years trying to figure out how to get a good, clean speaker to sound good when I played through it and not break all up. And some guy built a fuzz pedal. That was the change of the sound of the guitar, was a fuzz pedal. Jimi Hendrix, came in with the fuzz pedal, which gave a different edge on music, to music. And it created what we call the acid rock. But
so the music changed on you?
Yeah, the music changed, but we dealt with it, and we starved the guys that are in the business. Almost hit us like the energy crisis, you understand? Because all of a sudden, they changed horses right in the middle of the freeway, and it was a collision.
Did it help at all that a lot of the groups at the time were paying homage to your style? The Who, the Yardbirds, the Animals, the Stones, all of them basically said they took their ideas from Bo Diddley. Yeah. I guess that didn't necessarily feel good at the time.
At that time, I was a little bit upset about it because I wasn't educated in the vein of accepting that. I figured if I went and got mine, why not you go get yours? You understand what I mean? And leave me alone. But then after a while, I started thinking, hey, that's pretty good. I must be doing something right for these cats to think that I'm good enough for them to copy.
Love you, baby, till I don't want you to take my breath.
So they helped to keep Bo Diddley alive, and I thank them for it. I think I opened the door, should I say, I laid the groundwork for a lot of up-and-coming musicians. Like Elvis, Elvis copied me and Jackie Wilson. And when he came to the Apollo Theater and stood backstage and watched me, you see the way that dude is doing, wiggling his legs and doing that gyration stuff? If you can do that, man, look at how the people is going off. If you can do that, man, you're a success. It worked.
7:53 on this Thursday morning. We're coming back in just a moment. We'll take a break right here. We're back after this.
Oh, did the body baby diamond ring? If that diamond